So, this is Judy Grahn's A Woman is Talking to Death. 1. Testimony in trials that never got heard. My lover's teeth are white geese flying above me. My lover's muscles are rope ladders under my hands. We were driving home slow. My lover and I across the Long Bay Bridge one February midnight when midway over in the far left lane I saw a strange scene. One small young man standing by the rail, and in the lane itself, parked straight across as if it could stop anything. A large young man upon a stalled motorcycle, perfectly relaxed, as if he'd stopped at a hamburger stand. He was wearing a pea coat and Levi's, and he had his head back, roaring. You could almost hear the laugh. It was so real. Look at that fool, I said, in the middle of the bridge like that, a very womanly remark. Then we heard the meaning of the noise of metal on a concrete bridge at 50 miles an hour in the far left lane, filled up with a big car that had a motorcycle jammed on its front bumper like the whole thing would explode. The friction spark shot up bright orange for many feet into the air, and the racket still sets my teeth on edge. When the car stopped, we stopped parallel, and Wendy headed for the call box while I ducked across those 6 lanes like a mouse in bowling alley. Are you hurt? I said. The middle-aged driver had the grayest black face. I couldn't stop. What happened? And then I muttered. Somebody, I said, was on a motorcycle. I ran back 1 block, 2 blocks. The space for walking on the bridge is maybe 18 inches. Whoever engineered this arrogance in the dark. Stiff wind seemed I would be pushed over the rail, would fall down screaming onto the hard surface of the bay, but I did not. I found the tall young man who thought he owned the bridge, now lying on his stomach, head cradled in his broken arm. He had his glasses on, but somewhere he had lost most of his Levi's. Where were they? And his shoes? 2 short cuts on his buttocks, that was the only mark, except his thin white seminal tubes were strung out behind, no child left in him. And he looked asleep. I plucked wildly at his wrist, then put it down. There were 2 long-haired women holding back the traffic just behind me with their bare hands. The machines came down like mad bulls. I was scared, much more than usual. I felt easily squished, like the earthworms crawling on a busy sidewalk after the rain. I want to leave. I met the driver walking back. The guy's dead. I gripped his hand. The wind was going to blow us off the bridge. Oh my God, he said. Haven't I had enough trouble in my life? He raised his head, and for a second he was enraged and yelling at the top of the bridge. I was just driving home. His head fell down. Now I've killed somebody. I looked down at my own pea coat and Levi's, then over at the dead man's friend who was bawling and blubbering, what they would call hysteria in a woman. It is impossible, he wailed. But it was possible. It was indeed accomplished and unfeeling, snoring in its pea coat without its Levi's on. He died laughing. That's a fact. I had a woman waiting for me in her car in the middle of the bridge. I'm frightened, I said. I'm afraid, he said. Stay with me. Please don't go. Stay with me. Be my witness. No, I said. I'll be your witness later. And I took his name and number, but I can't stay with you. I'm too frightened of the bridge. Besides, I have a woman waiting and no license and no taillights. So I left, as I have left so many lovers. We drove home, shaking. Wendy's face grayer than any white person's I've ever seen. Maybe he beat his wife. Maybe he once drove taxi and raped a lover of mine. How to know these things? We do each other in. That's a fact. Who will be my witness? Death wastes our time with drunkenness and depression. Death, who keeps us from our lovers. He had a woman waiting for him. I found out when I called the number, days later. Where is he? She said. He's disappeared. He'll be all right, I said. We could have hit the guy as easy as anybody. It wasn't anybody's fault. They'll know that. Women so often say dumb things like that. They teach us to be sweet and reassuring and say ignorant things because we don't invent the crime, the punishment, the bridges. That same week I looked into the mirror and nobody was there to testify how clear an unemployed queer woman makes no witness at all. Nobody at all was there for those 2 questions. What did she do? And who was she married to? I am the woman who stopped on the bridge, and this is the man who was there. Our lovers' teeth are white geese flying above us, but we ourselves are easily squished. Keep the women small and weak and off the street, off the bridges. That's the way, brother. One day I will leave you there, as I have left you there before, working for death. We found out later what we left him to. 6 big policemen answered the call, all white, no child in them. They put the driver up against his car and beat the hell out of him. What'd you kill that poor kid for, you mother? Here, that's a fact. Death only uses violence when there is any kind of resistance. The rest of the time, a slow wear down will do. They took him to 4 different hospitals till they got the drunk test report to fit their case and had him 5 days in a jail without a phone call. How many lovers have we left? There are as many contradictions to the game as there are players. A woman is talking to death, though talk is cheap, and life takes a long time to make right. Got a cheesy lawyer who had him cop a plea, 15 to 20 instead of life. Did I say life? Arrogant young man who thought he owned the bridge, fell asleep on it, died laughing. That's a fact. The driver sits out his time off the street somewhere. Does he have the most vacant of eyes? Will he die laughing? 2. They don't have to lynch the women anymore. Death sits on my doorstep, cleaning his revolver. Death cripples my feet, sends me out to wait for the bus alone, then comes by driving a taxi. The woman on our block with 6 young children has the most vacant of eyes. Death sits in her bedroom loading his revolver. They don't have to lynch the women very often anymore. Although they used to. The Lord and his men went through the villages at night, beating and killing every woman caught outdoors. The European witch trials took away an independent people. 2 different villages, after the trials were through that year, had left in them each 1 living woman. 1. What were those other women up to? Did they run over someone? Stopped on the wrong bridge? Do they have teeth like any kind of geese? Put children in them? 3. This woman is a lesbian. Be careful. In the military hospital where I worked as a nurse's aide, the walls of the halls were lined with howling women waiting to deliver or have some parts removed out of big private rooms contained the general's wife who needed a wart taken off her nose. We were instructed to give her special attention, not because of her wart or her nose, but because of her husband, the general. As many women as men die, and that's a fact. At work, there was 1 friendly patient already claimed. A young woman burnt apart with x-ray. She had long white tubes instead of openings, rectum, bladder, vagina. I combed her hair. It was my job, but she took care of me as if nobody's touch could spoil her. Oh, death. Oh, death. Have you seen the twinkle in the dead woman's eye? When you are a nurse's aide, someone suddenly notices you and yells about the patient's bed and tears the sheets apart so you can do it over and over, while the patient waits doubled over in her pain for you to make the bed again, and no one ever looks at you, only what you do not do. Here, General, hold the soldier's bedpan for a moment. Hold it for a year. Then we'll promote you to making his bed. We believe you wouldn't make such messes if you had to clean up after them. That's fantasy. This woman is a lesbian. Be careful. When I was arrested and being thrown out of the military, the order went out, don't anybody speak to this woman, and for those 3 long months almost nobody did. In the day room when I answered it fell silent till I had gone. They were afraid. They knew the wind would blow them over the rail, cops would come, the water would run into their lungs, everything I touched was spoiled. They were my lovers, those women, but nobody taught us how to swim. I drowned. I took 3 or 4 others down when I signed the confession of what we had done. Together. No one will ever speak to me again. I read this somewhere. I wasn't there. In World War II, the U.S. Army had invented some floating amphibian tanks and took them over the coast of Europe to unload them, landing ships all drawn up in a fleet and everybody watching. Each tank had a crew of 6 and there were 25 tanks. The first went down the landing planks and sank. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth went down and sank. They weren't supposed to sink. The engineers had made a mistake. Crews looked around wildly for the order to quit, but none came. And in the sight of thousands of men, each 6 crewmen saluted his officers, battened down his hatch in turn, and drove into the sea and drowned. until all 25 tanks were gone. Did they have vacant eyes, die laughing, or what? What did they talk about, those men? As the water came in. Was the general their lover? 4. A mock interrogation. Have you ever held hands with a woman? Yes. Many times. Women about to deliver, women about to have breasts removed, wombs removed, miscarriages, women having epileptic fits, having asthma, cancer, women having breast bone marrow sucked out of them by nervous or indifferent interns, women with heart condition who were vomiting, overdosed, depressed, drunk, lonely to the point of extinction, women who had been run over, beaten up, deserted, starved, women who had been bitten by rats, women who were happy, women who were celebrating, women who were dancing with me in large circles or alone, women who were climbing mountains or up and down walls or trucks or roofs and needed a boost up, or I did. Women who simply wanted to hold my hand because they liked me. Some women who wanted to hold my hand because they liked me better than anyone. There were many women. Yes, many. What about kissing? Have you kissed any women? I have kissed many women. When was the first woman you kissed with serious feeling? The first woman I ever kissed was Josie, who I loved at such a distance for months. Josie was not only beautiful, she was tough, handsome too. Josie had black hair and white teeth and strong brown muscles. And she dropped out of school unexplained. When she came back only for one day, to finish the term. And there was a child in her. She was all shame, pain, and defiance. Her eyes were dark as the water under a bridge, and no one would talk to her. They laughed and threw things at her. In the afternoon, I walked across the front of the class and looked deep into Josie's eyes, and I picked up her chin with my hand because I loved her. Because nothing like her trouble would ever happen to me. Because I hated it. She was pregnant and unhappy and an outcast. We were 13. You didn't kiss her? How does it feel to be 13 and having a baby? You didn't actually kiss her? Not in fact. You have kissed other women? Yes. Many. Some of the finest women I know I have kissed. Women who were lonely. Women I didn't know and didn't want to, but kissed because that was a way to say yes. We are still alive and lovable, though separate. Women who recognized the loneliness in me, women who were hurt. I confess to kissing the top of a 55-year-old woman's head in the snow in Boston who was hurt more deeply than I have ever been hurt. And I wanted her as very few people have wanted me. I wanted her and me to own and control and run the city we live in, to staff the hospital I knew would mistreat her, to drive the transportation system that had betrayed her, to patrol the streets controlling the men who would murder or disfigure or disrupt us, not accidentally with machines, but on purpose. Because we're not allowed on the streets alone. Have you ever committed any indecent acts with women? Yes. Many. I'm guilty of allowing suicidal women to die before my eyes or in my ears or under my hands because I thought I could do nothing. I'm guilty of leaving a prostitute who held a knife to my friend's throat because we would not sleep with her. We thought she was old and fat and ugly. I'm guilty of not loving her who needed me. I regret all the women I have not slept with or comforted, who pulled themselves away from me for the lack of something I had not the courage to fight for. For us. Our life, our planet, our city, our meat and potatoes, our love, these are indecent acts. Lacking courage, lacking a certain fire behind the eyes, which is the symbol, the raised fist, the sharing of resources, the resistance that tells death he will starve for the lack of the fat of us, our extra. Yes, I have committed acts of indecency with women, and most of them were acts of omission. I regret them bitterly. 5. Bless this day, O cat, our house. I was allowed to go 3 places growing up, she said. 3 places, no more. There was a straight line from my house to school, a straight line from my house to church, a straight line from my house to the corner store. Her parents thought something might happen to her, but nothing ever did. My lover's teeth are white geese flying above me. My lover's muscles are rope ladders under my hands. We are the river of life and the fat of the land. Death, you tell me I cannot touch this woman? If we use each other up on each other, there's a little bit less for you. A little bit less for you, oh death. Oh, death. Bless this day, O cat, our house. Help me be not such a mouse. Death tells the women to stay home, then breaks in the window. I read this somewhere. I wasn't there. In feudal Europe, if a woman committed adultery, her husband would sometimes tie her down, catch a mouse, and trap it under a cap on her bare belly until it gnawed itself out. Now are you afraid of mice? 6. Dressed as I am. A young man once called me names in Spanish. A woman who talks to death is a dirty traitor. Inside a hamburger joint, dressed as I am, a young man once called me names in Spanish, and he called me queer and slugged me. First I thought the ceiling had fallen down, but there was a counterman making a ham sandwich, and there I was spread out on his counter. For God's sakes, I said, when I could talk, this guy's beating me up. Can't you call the police or something? Can't you stop him? He looked up from working on a sandwich, which was my sandwich. I had ordered it. He liked the way I looked. This payphone right across the street, he said. Couldn't listen to the Spanish language for weeks afterward without feeling the most murderous of urges. A simple association of one thing to another. So damn simple. The next day, I went to the police station to become an outraged citizen. 6 big policemen stood in the hall, all white and dressed as they do. They were well pleased with my story, pleased it would have gotten beat out of me. So I left them, laughing, went home fast, and locked my door. For several nights I fantasized the scene again, this time grabbing a chair and smashing it over the bastard's head, killing him. I called him a spick, killed him. My face healed. His didn't. No child in me. Now, when I remember, I think, maybe he was Josie's baby. All the chickens come home to roost. All of them. 7. Death and Disfiguration. One Christmas Eve, my lovers and I, we left the bar driving home slow. There was a woman lying in the snow by the side of the road. She was wearing a bathrobe and no shoes. Where were her shoes? She had turned the snow pink under her feet. She was an Asian woman who didn't speak much English, but she said a taxi driver beat her up and raped her, throwing her out of his car. What on earth was she doing there on a street she helped pay for but doesn't know? Doesn't she know to stay home? I'm a pervert. Therefore, I've learned to keep my hands to myself in public, but I was so drunk that night I actually did something loving. I took her in my arms, this woman, until she could breathe right. And my friends are perverts too. They touched her too. We all touched her. You're going to be all right, we lied. She started to cry. I'm 55 years old, she said. And that said everything. 6 big policemen answered the call, no child in them. They seemed afraid to touch her, and grabbed her like a corpse and heaved her on their metal stretcher into a van, crashing and clumsy. She was more frightened than before. They were cold and bored. Don't leave me, she said. She'll be all right, they said. We left, as we have left all of our lovers, as all lovers leave all lovers. Much too soon to get the real loving done. 8. A mock interrogation. Why did you get into the cab with him, dressed as you are? I wanted to go somewhere. Did you know what the cab driver might do if you got into the cab with him? I just wanted to go somewhere. How many times did you get into the cab with him? I don't remember. If you don't remember, how do you know what happened to you? 9. Hey you, death. And ho, poor death. Our lover's teeth are white geese flying above us. Our lover's muscles are rope ladders under our hands. Even though no women yet go down to the sea in ships except in their dreams. Only the arrogant invent quick and meaningful end for themselves, of their own choosing. Everyone else knows how very slow it happens. How the woman's existence bleeds out her years, how the child shoots up at 10 and is arrested and old, how the man carries a murderous shell within him and passes it on. We are the fat of the land, and we all have our list of casualties. To my lovers, I bequeath the rest of my life. I want nothing left of me for you, oh death, except some fertilizer for the next batch of us, who do not hold hands with you, who do not embrace you, who try not to work for you, or sacrifice themselves, or trust or believe you. Oh, ignorant death, how do you know we happen to you? Wherever our meat hangs on our own bones, for our own use, your pockets so empty, death. Oh, death, you shall be